So I'm Tim Titus, Chief Technical Officer and founder of PathSolutions. I've been a network engineer for over 35 years. That means token ring, that means Novell NetWare, anything out there, any? So I worked with,
Deck-lack gateways?
which?
Deck.
No, didn't work with Deck. So in my travels, I've worked with just about every network monitoring and troubleshooting solution that's out there. I got frustrated many years ago when I realized that you'd have to install the software and then say, well, go collect this OID, go collect that OID. You have to know what to look for. You have to know where to collect the information. You have to know how to put the pieces together to actually say, here's what's going on with your network. And I figured, I just want something that tells me what's broken in my network. And when companies weren't moving towards automating troubleshooting, that's where I got frustrated and said, that's it, I'm going to quit my job, and found a company to specifically solve these sort of problems. So what I'm going to do is take you guys through some of what we can do with NetOps, some of what we can do with our telecom module. We also have a security module. We effectively are kind of the first company out there that says, I see a merging of NetOps and SecOps to the point where you need tools to actually allow those teams to collaborate. And then I'll also go through our remote user troubleshooting. First thing I'm going to start off with, though, is what are the problems with existing monitoring systems? And I think we've seen all of this with a lot of different products that are out there. You have to deploy a master collector. That might take maybe an hour or two to get that deployed. Then you have to set up and license and support a database. How many people love databases? Most network guys don't even like talking to DBAs. Okay. Next thing you do is you have to set up some remote collectors because, well, scalability. They have really big limitations on how far they can scale. Now that you have your infrastructure set up for monitoring, you have to start configuring. And you're going to set it up to monitor your switches, routers, gateways, firewalls. Basically a manual setup exercise. So if you miss anything during this setup, you're completely unaware of what you're missing. And you just move on. At this point, you realize what you're doing is you're pinging and you're collecting some basic SNMP inventory information, and you figure, okay, that's a good starting point, but I got to get a lot more information. So you spend additional configuration effort, adding monitoring of your internet connections, your WAN connections, your trunk ports here and there, and eventually you say, I can't spend another 6 weeks full time configuring this thing or building it out any further. So this is as far as you get. Now, what happens is, at this point, is a user complains and says, hey, I've had a slowdown. Hey, the network glitched. What happened? And you go, and the first thing you do is you go check your network monitoring software. Guess what it tells you? Everything's A-OK. And you're like, no, it's not A-OK. What happens at that point is you have to start manual troubleshooting by logging into switches, logging into routers, checking interfaces, checking error counters, checking configuration, looking for that needle in a haystack. And you have to know exactly which devices are included in this to be able to do that troubleshoot. So we looked at this whole world and said, this whole thing has to stop. So what we've done is we're building next generation monitoring with automated root cause troubleshooting. Here's what that looks like. We're going to deploy on a single machine. This is typically a virtual machine in your data center or in your headquarters. It's going to use SNMP to go out and find and interrogate every switch, router, gateway, and firewall, along with every interface. Now, if you're in charge of a network, you're responsible for the entire network. I've never met somebody who said, well, I'm only responsible for really just a few parts of the network. Your boss is going to come into you and say, what's wrong with the network? You need to know what's going on with the entire network. So we're going to go broad, far broader than any other solution. The second thing we're going to do is go deep. This network equipment has an amazing amount of intelligence stuck up inside. You guys pay for some enterprise-grade devices that has all sorts of information. But do you know or have time to go dig at that information? No. So we're going to automatically go deep, picking up all the performance, configuration, 19 different error counters of information, all the QoS, CDP, LLDP, PoE, all of this rich information comes back no matter what make, model, or manufacturer of network equipment. What we then do is we put this information through a heuristics engine. Notice I said heuristics, not AI. This is a heuristics engine. It's going to use logic. What it's going to do is pick up that information, analyze that with logic, and be able to come up with plain English diagnostics of faults that happen throughout the infrastructure. Now, all of this happens within the first day of deployment. What that means is by the end of the day, we're going to tell you everything your network equipment knows is broken, and we're going to give it to you in plain English. Okay, what does this mean? What this means is that you're going to be able to do proactive troubleshooting, maybe for the first time in your career, and say, I can solve the problems before the users complain. Oh, happy day. The second thing that can happen, though, is that because of these plain English prescriptions, you're going to push a lot of this stuff down to Tier 1 help desk. They can solve the cabling faults. They can solve the duplex mismatches, the PoE faults. How many network engineers love doing trouble tickets? Nobody. So what this solution enables is fewer trouble tickets for the senior level network techs, more tickets closed at first tier help desk level, and they're closed faster at first tier because there's no escalation needed. So that's going to make your end users happier. It's going to make help desk happier because they're closing tickets. It's going to make you guys a lot happier. And guess what? Your management is going to be happy because problems are solved lower in the organization at a lower cost. Everybody wins. Okay, so this is what we can do for your network. What we include in the core package is everything else needed to run a perfectly healthy network. You're getting diagramming, path mapping, port mapping, server monitoring, inventory, NBAR, NetFlow, configuration management to back up configs and push configs out to devices. So this is everything needed to run a perfectly healthy network. Okay, so that's our core module. We have some optional modules that can be added on top of this. Is our telecom modules, the first one I'll talk about. So if you have a phone system and figure, hey, I have a call quality problem between a pair of phones. Well, if somebody says that that call quality problem happened at 2:30 in the afternoon, most of you would be saying, well, yeah, I don't see anything on my network monitoring system, but it's not looking for the right information. It's not going to help you solve the problem. What that means is that user is going to have a poor quality phone call again and again and again before you get any closer to solving it. Well, we figured we're going to solve that. We have path mapping. You put in the IP addresses of those endpoints, let's say a phone to a phone or a phone to a gateway, and we're going to path map, showing you every link, switch, and router used to connect those, along with what happened along that path at any point in time during the day. Thus, you just run the report and it's going to say, oh, your call at 2:30 was bad because you were dropping 12% of the packets out of the high priority queue on the WAN edge router, and a few moments later dropping packets due to a bad station cord. You now have a root cause resolution as to why that call was bad and can solve the problem and tell the user this is not going to happen again. On top of this, we include a license unlimited call simulator that will simulate synthetic voice traffic across the LAN, across the WAN, or all the way end to end, so you can quickly locate where do we see latency, jitter, packet loss, out of order packets, loss of DSCP. So with all of that depth, it means you're going to be able to solve those call quality problems because not only do you have the ability to see what happened earlier when a call was bad, but you can also probe the network to say what's going on across this network in a live context. This can be used to test just across your network. It can be used to test to hosted providers, gateways, really anywhere you want to test to, you can target that. Okay. We have QVision that's going to look into Cisco QoS queues, so we'll show how they're configured and how they're performing. A lot of folks will end up saying, hey, I've got queues all over the place, but I have no idea if they're actually properly configured, no idea if they're dropping packets out of the high priority queue. We automatically show that. Again, part of our trick is automatic setup where we say, oh, it's a Cisco device. Do you have QoS? Yes? Okay, let's get that queuing information back and display it so that you don't have to configure it. It's just going to show you those queues and say, hey, you're dropping packets out of the high priority queue over here. We'll do SIP trunk monitoring and troubleshooting. We do Cisco IPSLA monitoring. We can locate every phone in the infrastructure. So if you're wondering where a phone went and say, oh, here's the phone, we can tell you the switch and port of where that phone is physically located because we have a phones report that tells you that. We can also trigger alerts if phones move in the environment. Real quick story on that front is that the telecom team ended up getting a couple of alerts, and they noticed that the nice Polycom in the conference room was swiped out of the conference room. They get an alert that that was disconnected at this time. And they got an alert that it was connected into this VP's office. They walked over to the VP and said, hey, when you're done with your call, you're going to move that back, right? And the VP was floored the fact that they knew that they moved it within 5 minutes of that move. We're doing all the MOS score monitoring and alerting, PoE monitoring, so every resource you need for rock solid telephony is all included in this module. Okay, so because we have so much more information collected on the network than other products, we found that we could solve some really interesting problems related to security. And something that not only Gartner's been talking about, but a lot of other organizations are saying, really, everything needs to move where you have NetOps and SecOps merging together with their tool sets so that you have one pane of glass that's going to be able to tell them what's going on between those teams. That way you don't have finger pointing saying, the security guy saying, hey, no, you have this device out here, and the NetOps team saying, we can't find the device in our tools. It also makes it so that there's just far more efficiency, because if you have a reconfiguration of the network, you do it once, and it's going to cover your NetOps tools and your SecOps tools. So we figured we'd create a SecOps module. What this module covers is attack surface monitoring, SOAR, as well as network detection and response. Let's dive in. First thing we're going to talk about is SOAR. So if you have a SIM or IDS that says, hey, we found some suspicious activity on this IP address, you need to go research this. Many SecOps teams find that, oh, they have to use 8 different tools. They have to go through a really long checklist of things to be able to determine, is this a false positive or is this an actual threat actor? Well, 30 minutes just means that most of these events probably don't get thoroughly or properly followed up on. We figured we need to automate that. What you do is put the IP address into TotalView, and we're going to tell you, here is the switch interface and VLAN of where the device is connected. Here's the manufacturer, the operating system, who's logged into the computer, what their rights and their capabilities are, what's running on that computer. And we're going to tell you, here's who it's communicating with. Okay, that all looks bad. Then we're going to give you an overall risk profile, because we summarize this information to say, hey, this is really bad. At this point, we're going to allow you to immediately quarantine. Instead of 30 minutes of manual research, this is now down to 30 seconds worth of automated research. What that's going to do is dramatically reduce dwell times of bad actors on the network. Okay, next we have policy monitoring. So if you have a high security asset like a database that should only be accessed by a set number of users, you want to know when inappropriate access like this occurs. This would trigger a policy violation alert. That way, you can go in, find out, hey, how did this communication happen, and how do we prevent it from happening a second time? We have automatic synchronization with NIST every 24 hours to determine what are the published vulnerabilities on every one of these switches, routers, gateways, and firewalls. That way, very quickly, you can say, gee, on this network, we only have 3 devices that have published vulnerabilities. Find out what those vulnerabilities are and how to mitigate them. We have a better understanding of your footprint than many other products. Let's say you're reading your news feed in the morning. Find out, hey, there's a new vulnerability for AudioPhone 335s. Hey, wait a minute, didn't we decommission all of those last quarter? Well, one search and we're going to confirm that actually, no, you still have 3 of these, and here's where they're connected on your network. We have new device detection within moments of some mystery device popping into your network. You're going to be able to recognize, here's what it is, where it's connected, who it talks to, and what they're doing. Do you want this on your network or not?
So how does that distinguish between like your normal end user machines turning on and off, or guests coming in on guest
If it's seen the
Wi-Fi
MAC
and
address
detecting
before, it
stuff?
says, hey, this is kosher, this can be here. If it's a laptop that it's the first time it's connecting, you're going to get that alert. If it's a device connected to a wireless network, like a guest network,
Mhm.
those can all be whitelisted to say, hey, these are guest networks, therefore don't tell me about that. So it's
Okay.
all based upon MAC addresses everywhere.
And you're writing some kind of policy to say to ignore certain types of things and not others.
Yeah, yeah. It's generally is that if you figure a brand new Dell laptop that you're hooking up to the network, we're going to trigger that alert on the first time because you're
Right.
going to be setting it up in the IT
Yep.
department. So it's going to trigger that, and you're going to be like, okay, this is fine. We're okay with this. And therefore, that laptop is now approved to be on your network kind of wherever, and it's never going to generate that alert again. But if somebody comes in and they physically plug in and they have a Lenovo laptop, that's going to trigger, hey, there's a new device here. We've never seen this before. This is Lenovo. This is not an approved vendor. You probably ought to investigate this a bit further and find out, hey, you have some analyst that came in and physically plugged into your network, and it's like, nope, not good.
And you designate a guest network.
Yeah, whitelist the guest network.
Okay.
That way, all the cell phones that are randomly rotating their
Yeah,
MAC
because I have
addresses.
this fear of ticket barrage.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we do a lot to prevent that because I lived that.
Yeah, I have a question. Like, does it detect virtual machines? Like, so for example, you could have virtual machines in server farm and data center or whatever, but in a environment where you might have developers working with like virtual hypervisors and things like that on their laptop, how would it deal with that environment?
So
that scenario?
if a laptop has a virtual machine on top of it, we're not going to detect it as unique because that MAC address doesn't get out beyond the physical MAC address. Because as far as well, depending upon the configuration, it would probably use that laptop's MAC address. It wouldn't be using its own MAC address. Obviously, you could configure it to say, hey, use the virtual machine's laptop at that point, sorry, virtual machine's MAC address. That point, yeah, we would trigger an alert. But if you're writing on the physical MAC address, we're not going to find that. Okay.
Could I ask a quick question about application awareness? Now, how does PathSolutions accommodate that aspect?
Sorry, application
Awareness.
So in one sense, I'll say we're light on the application awareness side. If you notice what we're doing is we're figuring we're going to cover layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and we're moving up through the stack, figuring that all those layer 1 problems are going to be gone. All those layer 2 problems gone. Layer 3 problems gone. Layer 4 problems gone. And so we're moving up through the stack. And so we figure there's so many products that are out there that'll say, oh, we will go ping and pull a web page off of Salesforce. Yeah, but if that web page doesn't come down, or there's problems with it, it's slow, there's packet loss, this sort of stuff, okay, what do? You need other tools. So we figure right now, let's have other companies focus on the application layer stuff. We're going to solve every problem from layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, moving up through the stack. That way, you just say, okay, have something else just do that ping of that website, pull that page, and we're going to solve the problem once they identify that there is a problem.
Helpful, thanks.
Okay, so rounding out SecOps module is we have geographic risk awareness. We can tell you about communications to unsavory countries. We have rogue device detection. So if somebody comes in and, oh, I just got a Netgear switch, I'm going to plug it in under my desk, we can alert on that. IoT device monitoring. So if you have printers or copiers that are sending data out to Dropbox, that's data exfiltration. Bad, bad, bad. We do certificate monitoring. So if you have website certificates that expire, and I know everyone does, the sad thing is that we can monitor that and be able to say, hey, this one's going to expire in 30 days. You ought to be aware of that. So it's really covering all those bases for security. Okay, our last module focuses on end user experience troubleshooting. So if you have workers that are in remote buildings and you don't want to have to traipse across campus, or folks that are working in remote sites, remote offices, or even working at home, if they have problems, you need to help solve those problems. So we looked at this and said, okay, there's other products out there that will say, hey, there's a problem with Comcast network. Honestly, Comcast, they're going to solve their problems. They've got professionals to deal with that. The problem is...
Sorry.
Well, it's not your responsibility to solve it, I guess is the thing. You're completely right on that side. But that was a good setup for... You need to help the user solve the problem to find out whose fault is it and what is the problem. So let's go through a sample scenario. You have a CFO who's working from home. They have a poor quality meeting. The first thing we're going to do is scope the issue out. So we've got the internet component. We've got the cloud service component. I think we need to get our software going on the wireless here because Zoom is slowly updating, slowly painting. So cloud server component, you have your headquarters component. The user might be having their home office. The whole trick with this is that there are hundreds of reasons and hundreds of locations where problems can come from. You can end up having problems due to wireless channel contention, wireless signal strength, firewall issues, ISP issues, split tunneling issues. Solving these problems is really challenging. Now, typically what people say is, oh, well, let's schedule a meeting with this user and see about solving the problem. Well, the user can't do the meeting right now. It's going to have to be at 2 in the afternoon. Okay, so you have scheduling conflicts. Okay, you get the meeting scheduled. You get in with the user, and the user, they actually can't get into the meeting. You're not going to solve the problem. Okay, so let's say the user does get into the meeting. At that point, they pass control to you, and you start looking and realize, wait, ping and traceroute are my only 2 troubleshooting tools? I'm not going to get the problem solved this way. Also, by this point, the problem they were having is long gone. So you're not going to get the problem solved. That just means you have to wait until the next time or the next time or the next time before you get any closer to solving the problem. And we looked at this and said, there's got to be a better way. So what you do is send the user a single agent. You send the user an agent. They put this on their desktop. Now, the user is non-technical. You know, they're a sales guy. Sadly, that's the worst non-technical, but they say, hey, I'm having a problem. You say, run the agent when you have the problem. What that agent is going to do is it's going to perform a test against every one of these elements that are out there, bring the data back according to the user's perspective of the network. It's then going to batch the information and send it back to the TotalView server. At this point, you're going to get an email notification with the results, and you never had to have a meeting with the user.
Now, are you able to deploy this agent prior to the issues, or is this like a reactive thing you're doing?
Well, you can do it either way. You can deploy it prior to the issues, or you can just send it to the user and say, hey, run this now because you're having the problem. So what that agent is going to do is it has an automated set of tests that you can prescribe. So you can change the tests as you want. We mirrored, going back to sci-fi, we mirrored Star Trek with our test regimen, figuring there's a level 4 test, level 3, level 2, level 1. So if you do a level 1 diagnostic, it's going to collect all sorts of information, being able to tell you, hey, it looks like the laptop is healthy, the wireless signal strength is low, and there's also a lot of channel contention in your neighborhood for channel 1. If you change to channel 6, you're going to have it all to yourself. You're going to have a better time. Your firewall looks like it's adding 20 milliseconds of latency to every packet passing through. How old's your firewall? Oh, well, it's this 16-year-old Linksys firewall. Okay, you probably ought to upgrade that to something a little more modern to better deal with streaming protocols. Your ISP is only giving you 4.2 megs of upload, and they're also dropping packets on the second hop router, giving you a low MOS score. Okay, let me work with you to open a ticket with your ISP to get those problems resolved. The whole trick is you have this wealth of technical information automatically collected by a non-technical user at the moment they have their problem, so that you can review it very quickly, never have to have a meeting with the user, and say, here are 3 things we're going to do to immediately improve your environment.
This is something that's triggered on demand, though, whether the agent's been deployed previously or not. It's triggered on demand as opposed to like a scheduled proactive scoring.
You can do both ways.
Okay.
So just perfect lead in, ad hoc testing, continuous testing. So if you have folks that are in a call center, they're working at home, they're call center agents, it can be doing continuous testing in the background. You can do quality policy enforcement, saying, hey, you cannot log into the call center to be able to take a call unless you pass these tests. So it can end up saying, hey, no, sorry, we're not going to let you connect because you're connected wireless. You're not going to take any calls. Physically hardwire, and then we'll let you take calls. So it allows to have that controllability. Also, the end user can do a wireless signal strength mapping exercise. Here's an example. We had a user that was in conference room number 1, and they said, gee, the RSSI signal strength is kind of yellow. Is that bad? It's kind of marginal. But they picked up and they walked their laptop over to conference room number 2, and it changed to a bright green color. Then they picked up their laptop and walked over to the break room, and it dropped to yellow, red, then black, telling them that that break room is a dead zone for wireless. So whether they're at home and they want to find out, hey, can I do meetings from a lounge chair in my backyard? This will help them determine, because that always happens, this will help them determine what the signal strength is in their environment. Okay, so the next question is, these are our core module, 3 optional modules. Where do we go from here? So we look at the vast amount of data that we've collected and figure that we can do some really interesting things beyond what we're already doing. So I'm going to start sharing our roadmap of where we're going to target being in roughly a year. So with that roadmap, the first thing we're going to do, you're not going to throw things at me, AI. We have a heuristics engine that makes this easy, but the thing is that we see some realistic uses for AI. This is something a lot of marketing folks you've all heard about marketecture. We're an engineering company. We don't build marketecture. We actually build product. So what we look at AI is this can end up doing some very interesting things because of the fact that we have a unique data set. So our data set is broader than others. Remember, we're covering the entire network. It's deeper than others. So we have far more information on your network's operation than any other product. Okay, so what we can do with that is we can do anomaly detection far better than any other product simply because we have more data and more relevant data. I've seen other companies out there say, hey, we can do AI. And it's like, yeah, but you only collect 3 different pieces of information. How intelligent can you be with 3 pieces of information? But on the average network, we're going to have 10,000 pieces of information. That vast data makes it so that you're going to get better answers. Second thing is that plain English queries. How many of you are frustrated when you have your boss come up to you and say, hey, I want you to generate a report for me telling me of all of our North American WAN links, which ones are trending towards 90% utilization over the next 3 months? And you're thinking, oh God, why can't this user self-satisfy? And that's where AI is going to come fix this. So if you could type into a chat interface to say, for business analysis, which WAN interfaces in North America are expected to hit over 90% utilization in the next 3 months? And the system would say, oh, I know what your intent is. I can use AI to determine the response based upon the data set that we have and say, you have 2 interfaces that are expected to hit 90% utilization. Therefore, that manager self-satisfies and gets their answer. This means that building custom reports and building data insights, all that's gone because you can just ask it any question you want about the network and have an answer. That's going to solve business problems faster because you're not having to wait. Is the network team done building that report for me so I can analyze what's going on? No, it's all just done ad hoc. Troubleshooting. What happened 30 minutes ago in the Atlanta office? If the data is in the system, we can now solve a training issue. Because if somebody doesn't know how to use our product, granted it's far easier to use than a lot of other products that are on the market, you can have that junior level technician say, hey, what happened on the network? And it'll end up saying, oh, the trunk port to the Atlanta office was overloaded because there was a backup of the data center that was going on at that time, at that 30-minute time frame. And it'll be able to give you those sort of answers because we have all of the data. Thus, this means you now can have even more junior level people understand what's going on the network. So that's really kind of what we want to do with our AI. And we figure it can be far more powerful because of the fact that we have better data, we have smarter data than a lot of other products out on the market that say, oh, we can do AI because it's a great buzzword. And I figured, no, you need to actually have it answer business questions. That's the whole trick. Other things we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing Cisco EOX monitoring. So for all of the Cisco devices on your network, we're going to track end of sale, end of support, end of security, so that you can be aware and get alerts to be able to say, hey, we're just about to go out of support on this device. We either need to upgrade it or end up getting a support renewal on it. Last thing I'll talk about is Business Resource Manager. So we have a ton of information that solves the problem for the technicians, for the engineers. Plain English answers. We can make it so that your help desk can solve problems, so there's less burden on the network engineering team. We figure with all this information, we're going to extrapolate it up to the highest level and be able to say, here's what's going on regarding your business. Here's what's going on regarding strategic resources. Here's what's going on with your costing, so you can be aware of saying, hey, this is what your network is costing, and start leading into I'm not going to say we're going to be there on our first release, but leading into suggestions for improvement to say, hey, you're going to drop your overall network operations cost by $20,000 a month if you do this, and start being able to add those recommendations because we have the data. And so that's really the whole trick there.
Quick question, Scott Robon. Any thoughts of other vendor support?
We're going to start with Cisco because it's really the broadest market. One of the things that I'm kind of looking for, and I'd love to learn from you guys, is that what are other companies doing as far as offering APIs for being able to do queries? So Cisco has a very rich CCO API that we're going to be pulling data and synchronizing with that networking data. But I'd love to see if Extreme is doing it, if Juniper is doing it. What are their APIs like? And I haven't dug into their APIs because I figured, hey, let's start this with Cisco because it's the biggest market.
Quick question on AI. I commend that it is about the data. It's not about an elegant AI engine necessarily. And I'm just wondering, are you using like a small language model to train your data? Okay.
So we've already started out with a small language model, and we're getting into training right now. So that's kind of the where we are on the development. But I'm incredibly excited about the business problems we can solve. My take on AI is that the engines are all going to be commoditized. I mean, they're probably already commoditized at this point. But it's really is the data is the unique part. And the second part that's unique is the training, is that people think, well, no, it's all about the data. No, it's not all about the data. It's the data and the training. Because the problem is you can have a great data set, but if it's been trained to not answer the actual questions that people want, so we figure if you get proper business queries, you get the idea of saying, gee, what would a C-level person want to know about the network? And can we answer those questions? Because if they train the data the wrong way, you can have a great data set, great AI engine, and not be useful to anyone. And so it's the training that makes it useful.
Agree. And so the roadmap is at 25?
So yeah,
Okay.
this is about 12 months out.
Okay.
Some things will come a little earlier. We have some things targeted for Cisco Live, but it's really targeting for end of next year.
Good to know.
So there's our turtle. I have turtles for all of you guys, so they will be arriving shortly. But I guess at this point, if you guys have questions, I'll take those.
Yeah. So I do have a question regarding the user experience monitoring. Right. That's obviously a hot topic right now. As we move users out of the enterprise network, we move the applications out of the enterprise network into a hybrid state. The thing I'm curious about is just kind of about your feeling on marketing positioning. A lot of the other solutions in that space are either something that's already an agent that's providing some value to the endpoint and to the administrative team, like a Tanium or something like that, or we see this a lot with an agent for a SASE or SSD solution. Zscaler, Cisco, Fortinet, Checkpoint, Palo. Everybody's got DEX built into their SASE agent. Looks like your solution's kind of a standalone there. So where do you see you being a better fit versus, because in that remote user scenario, hopefully the customer's doing some sort of SSE type application access model. So where do you see yourselves being a good fit given that landscape?
In one sense, so you mentioned competitors in that area, and I'm going to say I don't really see a strong competitive landscape. For example, I'll say you have Cisco Thousand Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Cisco Thousand Eyes is fantastic at looking at the cloud, looking at saying, gee, what's going on Comcast network today? What's going on with level 3? What's going on with backbone providers? Why are we having problems with our Northeast office connecting to Salesforce? And so it's that sort of grand scale, which is fantastic for business managers. But when you get down to the help desk person saying, I'm trying to solve this one person's problem of connecting, and they can't connect, their help desk tools don't go deep enough into the network. Their help desk tools are focused on laptop management. Do they have patches? That sort of stuff. And I figured there needed to be a product that kind of bridged between those two solutions to say, here's what's going on with that user's environment regarding, are they dropping packets to their firewall in their LAN? Are they dropping packets into their ISP? Are they having problems with the memory on the machine? is just not enough? Are they having resource limitations? That sort of stuff on that one machine. So we don't do the broad stroke, gee, there's problems in the Northeast office. That's for Thousand Eyes. They're great at that sort of stuff. But when you have the help desk folks, or even you have IT departments, I'm talking to more and more IT departments where you've got an IT director and you've got 5 guys on their staff, and it's like they just don't have enough time to be able to get the job done. And so what you need is you need more information in front of them that's pre-digested, saying, hey, this person out here, their firewall is adding latency that is ridiculous. It shouldn't be adding 20 milliseconds of latency every packet passing through that firewall. Ask them about their firewall. And we also have ways looking to say, hey, it's a sonic wall firewall, so we can tell you that. We just can't tell you the model of it because there's no SNMP, there's no security or anything.
Right.
But based upon the MAC address, we can end up telling you, here's the manufacturer of it. But being able to say, hey, yeah, this is a problem with your home firewall, go upgrade that because that's where the latency is coming from on your network. So it's that sort of insight into wherever the user is, and maybe they're in Starbucks. And you say, okay, you're at Starbucks, you're having problems. Your wireless is actually really good. So you can't blame the Starbucks wireless for that. It's the ISP that Starbucks is using that's causing the problem, or it's here. So being able to have that, here's where the problem is, or if you have multiple problems, is really the trick of what we're doing. We're bringing to the picture that Thousand Eyes really can't do because they're not looking that close to the problem. And one of the things I've strongly believed is that ever since COVID came out is that it's the last mile. It's that user, it's their PC, it's the wireless, it's all of that mystery that the help desk, they don't have tools for that. And Thousand Eyes, they don't have tools for that. We effectively connect those two to be able to say, here's what's going on at that deep level.
That's what I'm understanding, Pete Welcher. That's what I'm understanding as the key value you're providing is that classic products are kind of stovepipe tunnel vision. They do SNMP and that's all they do, or they do security and that's all they do. And whereas you're sucking in Windows statistics or whatever and getting a more holistic view.
Yeah, you just nailed it. So, you want to give the next presentation?
Can I piggyback off that real quick? So on that topic, Scott Robon, you do a lot of cross-domain ingestion and analysis. I think other solutions are either network focused or security focused, because we're only chewing what we can bite off. How have you made decisions on where you can cross-compare and integrate, those data sources without getting overwhelmed? I know it's a vague question.
No, it's still perfect. I'm going to go back to really our target of that. You want layer 1 to be perfect. You want layer 2 to be perfect. You want layer 3 to be perfect.
You want everything to be perfect.
You want everything to be perfect. But in one sense, we've not focused on application because, again, there's a lot of products out there that focus on application, and we figure, you know what, let them do that. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of companies don't do is they don't say, gee, that's not for us. We know where we're going to be strong and where we can end up solving those problems. And so it's really is be the best at what we're targeting to do, which is layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, kind of moving up through that stack so that the network folks have a good day, that the security folks have a good day.